morning and welcome to Rising. We have a great show for you today. It's Monday morning. Welcome back from the weekend. Lindsay, good to be with you. You had a little less travel than usual, I think. You were actually in our fair city the whole weekend.
I spent the time in D.C. and I actually explored places like Eastern Market. I feel like it's going to be an ongoing thing. Like, what did I do to kind of embrace D.C. a little bit more? This weekend was my first time spending a weekend here.
Oh, nice.
Intentionally. So,
well,
yeah.
That's very nice.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I had a good one. My brother was visiting last week. He went home and played some Dungeons & Dragons this weekend, which always makes me happy.
I always hear you guys in my ear talking about that. I never know what you're referring to.
And you never will.
Coming up next on Rising, I'll discuss how President Trump is receiving millions of dollars in gifts while Americans are struggling economically.
We'll also discuss Andrew Cuomo's new line of attack on Zohran Mamdani.
We'll also touch on Trump saying he might deploy the National Guard to D.C. to fight crime. But first, we're going to start with Robby's radar. So what's on your radar today?
Let's get to it. Greg Gutfeld is a pretty funny guy. He's the late-night host on Fox News, which makes him the most well-watched comedian of cable news entirely. Yours truly has been on the show before. Really enjoyed the opportunity to reach such an audience, such a big audience. On the merits, it's the biggest audience there is as far as late night goes. So it makes sense to me. The one late night great would recognize another. To that end, late night host Jimmy Fallon hosted Greg Gutfeld recently. Here's a bit of Gutfeld discussing his career trajectory.
Stuff Magazine was there for a couple years.
Stuff Magazine.
Yeah, it was amazing. Got fired from there. Then went to Men's Health. Went to Maxim. Had to leave the country for, no, let's not get into that. God. In the UK and got fired from that. And so I was just sitting at a bar in Chelsea, and a friend says, you know, there's a Fox that wants to do a late night show. Are you interested? And I'm like, dude, I'm broke. So I will do anything. So they flew me over, and I started doing this show, Red Eye.
Gutfeld is a very funny man, and he's also successful, which is why Fallon had him on. In fact, Gutfeld bears the moniker King of Late Night because his audience on the conservative news channel Fox is higher than his competitors. It's a no-brainer for Fallon to host him as a kind of friendly mutual promotion. And yet, liberal mainstream media figures are furious that Fallon did this. Just look at the headlines here. Jimmy Fallon kisses the conservative ring, said Vulture. As if bothering to engage a conservative was an explicit endorsement of everything that person thinks. The Daily Beast spun it this way. Jimmy Fallon fawns all over MAGA late-night host Greg Gutfeld in softball chat, as if a humorous late-night show needs to be some vicious skewering of non-liberal perspectives. And of course, what remains of BuzzFeed was eager to attack Fallon for daring to platform Gutfeld at all. This seals it for me. People are completely turning on Jimmy Fallon for his recent talk show guest, and it's not pretty. That was the BuzzFeed headline. Remember back when this clickbait tripe actually mattered? When liberals rewarded BuzzFeed-esque content farming with millions of page views? When easily triggered progressives ruled the discourse with an iron fist? Well, guess what? Those days are over. Now no one cares what the pearl-clutching liberals of BuzzFeed have to say about anything. Gutfeld has a bigger audience, and for what it's worth, good on Gutfeld for being willing to platform alternative voices himself. Good on Fallon for being willing to platform alternative voices. Now, they didn't talk about politics, and that's okay. Not everything needs to be a political confrontation. Gutfeld, for his part, was incredibly magnanimous and thanked Fallon for having the guts to have him on. Seems like Fallon understands that late night is losing ground. Stephen Colbert, anyone? If he wants to become unprofitable and unsuccessful and ultimately unemployable, like the perennially unfunny Stephen Colbert, then he needs to innovate a bit. Now, I'm happy to see it, and probably the country's millions of conservatives were as well. More of this, please.
I was happy to see that Fallon is open-minded about his guests. I think Gutfeld, we have to be really specific that he is funny to you, but problematic to other people.
Problematic? What's problematic about it?
I had to make sure that I was accurate.
Okay,
I didn't want to bother your friend or the guest who you are on his show. So he suggested that conservatives should reclaim the word Nazi the same way that blacks reclaim the N-word. That was on it. That's a quote from him.
Was probably joking.
What's funny about that? What's funny about both of those? We talked about parody.
I'd have to find the context.
Fine. He also said that crime would disappear if women did. I mean, I guess that's a joke, but these are things that have come out of his mouth. He oversimplifies the Holocaust all the time. People get really upset with him and the conversations that he has. And I watched his show because I find it interesting. Charlemagne is a friend of mine who's been on his show, and I've seen the way that they banter, right? So obviously there's a space that he allows for people who might disagree with him to come on and have dialogue. But Jimmy Fallon, particularly, I think people are annoyed with him because in 2016, you'll remember, he had President Trump on right before the election. and these same headlines that you're reading probably happened again. But then Jimmy Fallon went ahead and did interviews in magazines and apologized, saying, that was wrong of me to platform him and not ask any serious questions. So to come here in 2025, a couple of years later, and do the same thing and not ask any questions about, and not that he needs to be Barbara Walters, right? Let's be clear about the space.
It's a comedy
But he
show.
still can ask a question that obviously, if there's somebody who many consider problematic, including possibly you based on your dialogue about having Trump on, which I want to be clear, I think a sitting possible president should be on talk shows and every type of show. But Gutfeld is not, and so you should definitely provide a space to ask him at least one question. Like, do you ever regret some? You could lightly. Do you ever regret some of the things you say on air? You think you go too far with like that's not an appropriate question. If me and you were at the bar, like I can ask you that. You can ask me that.
Well, fine, that's fine. But why is the assumption that the liberal perspective is the default perspective when there are more? Again, Gutfeld has a broader audience. There are more Trump supporters in this country than there are liberals. So why is the viewpoint like, oh, this is a weird outsider person, and we got to make sure we ask them some confrontational question? Like you wouldn't say that, I don't think, of like a liberal comedian. Like, let's make sure we grill them over some stupid thing liberals believe. Is I don't think exactly the perspective. In fact, I think if a liberal comedian were to go on Gutfeld, as happens from time to time, a cool left person, I don't think they're going to be mercilessly skewered.
Well, I certainly think that there should be space for, this is part of the conversation of, like, I like the line you said about clutching your pearls. That's the issue with Democrats right now, right? They're constantly, can't believe, like, we're not in that time anymore, okay? Everybody younger than the boomers who you like to constantly throw ridicule at, which respectfully, there's a lot of reasons why you possibly can. I still think that, we need to go with the times, and the times are a little bit more free. Conversations should happen. People on different sides of the aisle should communicate. We're not very much, we can't speak to you if you voted for this person or did this thing. But I think with Gutfeld, like, he created a space where he's very vocal. Sometimes his jokes get a little bit go all the way over into the level inappropriate, and so
you just kind of watch whether the joke is inappropriate.
I guess his audience loves. I guess the audience loves to watch that.
Can't jokes be inappropriate and still be funny? I don't know what the context were for the examples you provided. I assume the crime would disappear if women disappear. I mean, men cause most crime, so this is like a nagging wife joke. Like, if your old ball and chain wasn't driving you up a wall, you wouldn't go commit crime. Is that maybe the joke? Which is
fine,
pretty benign, if so.
Possibly, but the
how straight to the moon kind of thing.
I'll explain where that one came
from. Right.
It came from, like, okay, how many times that liberals might call somebody fascist or Nazi-esque or use
and then it loses all meaning.
It loses the meaning, and so he's like, okay, so let's just recoup the word in the same way that we might hear a rap song saying that word. And so that was his point. But it's just like, distasteful, correct? Like, don't we want to make sure that we're having like a little bit of decorum,
it's kind of like you're calling me a fascist because I think that the government ought to do something about the crime. Right, doesn't really make me a fascist, but I might be called a fascist for expressing that opinion. In fact, when we're going to be talking about the D.C. whole crime situation, I'm very excited for that discussion. That's coming up next. People won't want to miss it. And I saw somebody on Reddit, I think, this went viral on social media, just saying there's too much crime and I would like there to be less, and it got taken down for being, oh, you're a fascist for thinking that.
It got taken down?
Yeah, by Reddit liberal moderators. So that goes to show how far the left, on a couple things, where you can't tell jokes, you can't, want common sense solutions.
But you can say stuff like, Jimmy Kimmel's not funny, right, to you. We watch his clips, I'm over here cackling, you have a straight face. I don't think Gutfeld's that funny, honestly.
That's fine.
And so, like, maybe people are just saying, like, Jimmy Fallon has a big audience. Like, come on, pick somebody else, pick anyone else.
I'm humorless, and I don't appreciate comedy, and I've never once laughed in my entire life. So I don't really think any of these people are funny, but people like to be entertained one way or another. Next up, President Trump threatening to federalize the nation's capital in an attempted crackdown on crime and homelessness. We'll talk about it next. We'll be right back.